For more on Benghazi, I'm very pleased to be joined by Michael Tomasky, special correspondent with Newsweek and the Daily Beast, and by Richard Socarides, former senior advisor to President Clinton and now a contributor to thenewyorker.com. Gentlemen, what a pleasure to have both of you here this evening. Richard, let me start with you. We've read some of the original memos, and we've seen, of course, how the talking points were refined until the final version that went out. Is the final product, do you think, a result of interagency squabbling, or is it some elaborate cover-up? I should mention that Victoria Nuland, of course, the State Department spokeswoman involved in this editing, previously worked for Vice President Cheney.
Well, it could very well, I mean, my own personal opinion is it is neither of those things. I mean, I think, you know, the idea that the revisions of talking points is anything kind of scandalous or unusual. I mean, you know, communications professionals in governments, I mean, that's what we do. I mean, we spend a lot of our time deciding how to describe events to the general public and how to describe these events to press people. So the notion that people would refine and revise the way certain things were described, I mean, there's nothing unusual or in any way out of the ordinary out of this. Now, I mean, I think the real issue becomes, you know, was there a dispute between the State Department and the CIA in which they were trying to kind of make sure that no one side blamed the other? I mean, that may be interesting, and it may go to explaining what actually happened, you know, may shed some light on what actually happened and whether there was any fault and why we weren't prepared. But this whole, the whole talking points discussion is nonsense. There is nothing to it. There's no scandal. There's no cover-up. The writing of talking points does not make for a cover-up.
Well, I want to bring Michael Tomasky in by asking him, considering everything Richard just said, Michael, if Jay Carney told the White House press corps that there was only one revision, we find out there was a dozen, does that create a scandal that's going to be a big headache for the White House?
It might be a big headache for Jay Carney. I don't know. You know, I don't know exactly the content of those 12 revisions. Maybe they're all in track changes and they can go back and look. You know, maybe a comma was taken out. Maybe a that was changed to a which. There was apparently only one substantive one. But look, you know, I basically agree with Richard. Obviously, you know, I don't think that there's a big scandal here, and I think the fact that Obama today, he made a very good point today when he mentioned in his press conference the testimony of his counterterrorism advisor Matthew Olson, who went up to the Hill on September 19th, 2012, just 3 days after Susan Rice's infamous television appearances, and said, "We think that this was an act of terror." Now, the heart of the Republican case against the administration here is that they were hiding the fact that this was an act of terror for electoral reasons because it was campaign season. But here was the president's chief counterterrorism guy going up and telling a committee of Democrats and Republicans that it was an act of terror. That's not really hiding, if you ask me.
Well, it seems like the heart of their accusations keeps getting heart transplants. First, it was that the president left these people to die. Then they had the Hicks testimony, which they seem to have begun to forget about now. And now it's back to this memo being revised many times. Richard, were you surprised to hear Congressman Issa, the Oversight and Reform Committee chair, accuse the former CIA director, David Petraeus, of saying what the administration wanted him to say and saying that Ambassador Pickering was only hearing what the administration wanted him to hear? Was David Petraeus a patsy for Hillary Clinton?
You know, I mean, it's hard to believe, right? I mean, it like all of this, I think, is they're kind of making it up as they go along. I mean, I think that, listen, to the extent that the Republicans insist upon making this about a scandal, about a cover-up, about going after Hillary, about going after President Obama, I mean, you know, the truth is that there are some legitimate questions about what went wrong. I mean, you know, Americans died, and there are very legitimate questions as to, you know, what the errors were. But I think that the Republicans will eventually lose credibility if they just keep making about this scandal about people calling it a cover-up. There is no, you know, there are legitimate national security questions around this issue, but there is no hint of cover-up or scandal.
Indeed. However, Jay Carney insists there was just one White House revision made to the Benghazi talking points. Given how much those points were revised, we know that's not true. Is he telling the truth of it? Michael, is this a case of it depends on what the meaning of is? I mean, did Jay Carney lie? And if he lied, should he be fired?
Well, I don't know if he lied. You know, he may have had bad information. He may have gotten crossed up. You know, I wasn't there in the room, and I don't know the background. I just can't say for sure that he lied. I suppose if he lied, that's pretty problematic. But you know, even so, I think a little perspective is important here. You know, we're talking about we're talking about something that, as Richard has said, is just not. It's not an issue that really should be rising to the level that it's rising to, just in general. It just really shouldn't be. It would be nice, it would be good if we could hold bipartisan, good faith hearings on what happened in Benghazi so as to make sure that something like this, you know, wouldn't happen again. You can't always prevent these things, but to try and take steps to make sure that things like this, something like this didn't happen again, and that both parties could agree on that and shake hands, and that somebody would lose their jobs. And in fact, 3 people already have lost their job in the State Department over this.
Indeed.
And we could then, you know, shake hands on that and be done with it. But that's not how, obviously, it's going to go.
The only thing we seem to know for sure is that this will continue. The Republicans will be talking about it for many months to come, and the party that's not really accomplished anything legislatively now has a way of getting their base to show up at the polls. It's going to raise a lot of money for Republicans. Richard Socarides and Michael Tomasky will both be with me after the break. Coming up,